Welcome to My Healing is Your Healing, a podcast for the woman who is ready to stop performing and reclaim her voice. I'm your host, Celeste, and around here, we don't do surface level. We go deep. Each week, we'll explore concepts like self-discovery, radical honesty, and the kind of healing that rewrites your story from the inside out. This is a space for truth-telling, for remembering who you are, and for coming home to yourself, louder, braver, and more radiant than ever. So come as you are, and let's do this together. Let's begin. Welcome back to My Healing is Your Healing. I am your host, Celeste, and today we're talking about something that almost every single woman I know struggles with. Even the ones who are emotionally intelligent, even the ones who have read the books and done the therapy and can articulate their attachment style. We're talking about intuition. This is the quiet inner knowing that says this is right or this feels off before you can logically explain it. And here's what I need you to hear right away. Your inner knowing is not confusing. It is not chaotic or dramatic or sending you mixed messages. But what is confusing is everything that we've layered on top of it. You've got fear and overthinking, people-pleasing, the need to be liked, and the terror of being wrong. And this is just noise. This is not your intuition. And for a long time, I thought that intuition was hooey or slightly suspicious, right? Like something that people talked about when they didn't have real evidence. I am a clarinetist. I have a doctorate. I like data. Show me the spreadsheets. So when I would feel something in my body, some kind of hesitation or a tightening or this quiet no, I would kind of explain it away. Oh no, you're just being sensitive, Celeste. You're overreacting. This is fine. And then I would override it so that I could stay connected or that I could fit in and I wouldn't rock the boat. But here's the truth that most of us don't say out loud. Women don't distrust their intuition because it's unreliable. We distrust it because we don't want it to be true. Let's go a little deeper here. If you're constantly feeling confused, or if you're second-guessing yourself after every decision, or stuck in a loop of asking yourself, is this my gut, or is this anxiety? That doesn't mean that you don't have intuition. It just means that you've been overriding your intuition for a long time. And when you override something consistently, it gets harder and harder to hear clearly. Intuition is simple, or at least it should be. It's not dramatic and it does not give us a TED talk. It just says no, or yes, or not this. Anxiety, on the other hand, brings props and lighting and a full production crew. It shows up with urgency. It speeds up your thoughts and it tightens your chest and it tells you that you need to fix something immediately. On the flip side, intuition doesn't rush. It doesn't make you panic or cause you to spiral. It just exists. And confusion usually comes after you've ignored that initial signal. Confusion sounds like you feel something in your body, a quiet no or a heaviness, or you sense that something isn't aligned, and then within about 3 seconds, your brain jumps in and it says, well, wait, that can't be right. Or you're probably overthinking. What if you're wrong? What are they going to think of me? And suddenly you're not listening inside anymore. You're scanning outward. You're starting to gather opinions and you're polling your friends. Or you're rereading that text message threads 17 times over. And you Google and you journal and you analyze tone and punctuation like you're a private investigator. Not because you don't know, but because you don't trust yourself enough to stand by what you already felt. So here's another layer of this that matters. A lot of women confuse intuition with anxiety. They'll say, I don't know if this is my gut or if I'm anxious. So let me help you separate the two of them. Like we talked about before, anxiety is loud. It feels urgent. It's pushing you towards immediate action. It's reactive. Intuition is calm. Even when it's telling you something hard. You might feel disappointed, you might feel sad, but you won't feel frantic. Intuition doesn't demand that you give an over-explanation or some kind of speech. It doesn't require you to defend it. It is just a clean internal sense. It can show up as a quiet no that doesn't need an explanation, or a heaviness inside when something looks good on paper but feels off in your body. A repeated thought that comes back no matter how many times you try and rationalize it away, or a subtle pull towards something that feels right even if it doesn't make sense yet. And here's the inconvenient part. Intuition rarely tells you what's easiest. It tells you what's true. It tells you you need to leave the job that looks impressive because it's overwhelming or it's taking too much of your personal time. It tells you that the relationship isn't right, even though he checks all of the boxes. And it tells you to speak up when staying quiet would keep the peace. It disrupts the plan. And because it disrupts the plan, we push it down. We say, this is fine. Don't look over here. Don't be so dramatic, Celeste. Or other people would be grateful for this. And the more that we silence it, the louder that the body gets. First, it's just this gentle whisper. Then it's tension. Then it's anxiety. And then it's resentment. And then it becomes burnout. And your body will escalate if you don't listen. And it's not meant to punish you. It's just trying to get your attention, to nudge you towards what's in alignment with yourself. And this is where it gets very personal. I can think of multiple moments in my life where I knew before I had proof, before I had any evidence, or before anybody else agreed with me. One of the biggest was when I walked towards the altar 2 years ago. Everything looked fine on paper. All of our families were there. My dress was on. The vows were written, but my body knew. And I didn't panic and I didn't scream. It just felt so heavy and misaligned, like I was stepping towards this life that didn't fit. And I tried to talk myself out of it. You're just nervous. Everyone gets cold feet. This is normal. But it wasn't nerves. It was the truth. Intuition is often inconvenient because it asks you to disappoint someone or disrupt something or admit that you've outgrown a version of yourself. And that's uncomfortable. And so instead of listening to it, we override it. And when we override for long enough, we start saying things like, oh, I don't trust myself anymore. I'm so indecisive. Or I'm confused all the time. No, you are not confused. You're ignoring the signal and then trying to solve the noise that follows. So I want to dig a little deeper into why we ignore this intuition in the first place, because there are real reasons, protective reasons, survival reasons. But before we move on, I want you to sit with this question. Think about the last time that you felt that quiet internal no. Did it come with drama, or did the drama come after you tried to override it? See, your intuition is not broken. It is patient. It's been there the whole time. The real work isn't learning how to have intuition. It's learning how to stop arguing with it. And we don't ignore our intuition because we're broken. We ignore it because we were conditioned to. Most of us were taught very, very early on to defer to parents, to teachers, to coaches, to authority, to experts, or to the system, to whoever seemed more confident than we felt at the time. We were taught to ask, hey, is this the right answer? Long before we ever learned how to ask what feels true to you. And over time, being right started to matter more than being aligned. Being agreeable mattered more than being honest with ourselves. And being included or connected mattered more than being known or seen. So when your intuition conflicts with what's expected, or what keeps you safe inside of a group, or what keeps you liked, you don't immediately think, oh, my body's giving me data. You think, I must be wrong. And this is not a character flaw, it's just training. That is, think about how often you are rewarded for being easy or a good girl. How often you are praised for being adaptable and polite, low maintenance and flexible. How often did you feel tension when you disagreed with someone? or you wanted something different, or you needed more. If you learned early that closeness required you to soften yourself, of course you doubt your inner knowing when it disrupts that connection. And then you add fear into the mix. Fear of being wrong, fear of regretting your decision, fear of standing alone, fear of being labeled dramatic or difficult. And then if you've experienced trauma or rejection or emotional unpredictability or learned people pleasing as a survival skill, this pattern gets reinforced over and over and over. And you learn very quickly, if I say what I really feel, I might lose them. And so you choose that outside validation over your intuition. Not because you're weak, but because you're just wired for that connection. And here's what happens when that becomes your pattern. The more that you override your intuition, the quieter it seems to get. Not because it disappeared, but because it's tired of being ignored. So let's talk about something that we don't usually admit out loud. External validation feels good. It's a hit. It's dopamine. It's relief. When someone agrees with you or reassures you or tells you you're right, says, I would have done exactly the same thing. It soothes you. There's nothing wrong with wanting reassurance, but the problem starts when validation becomes your compass, when every decision requires some kind of committee, when every inner nudge needs a second opinion, when you ask 5 other people what they think before you even check in with yourself. Because every time that you override your truth to be liked, every time that you explain yourself instead of honoring what you already know inside, every time that you ask for permission for something that your body has already decided, it sends yourself a message. I don't trust me. It's as simple as that. And then that message compounds. It's subtle at first. You get it once. But over time, it turns into, I don't know what I want. I'm so confused. I feel disconnected from myself. You didn't lose your intuition. You just stopped listening long enough that your own voice started to feel foreign. Now, here's the part that I love, because this isn't a tragic ending. Their book does not stop here. When you start listening to your intuition, to your inner knowing, even imperfectly, things start to shift quickly. You experience less anxiety, not because life gets simpler, but because you stop arguing with yourself all day long. You know that internal tug of war that you have? I feel like this is wrong. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But what if I regret it? But what if they're upset? The argument is exhausting. When you choose to trust yourself, though, even if that decision is uncomfortable, that noise gets quieter and you get faster clarity. You don't need to process everything to death anymore, and you don't need 17 pro-con lists. You don't need to rehearse that conversation in the shower 3 times before you feel ready. The decision might not be easy, but at least it feels clean. And that clean feeling matters because something subtle starts to happen. Your self-respect grows. And every time that you listen to yourself, you reinforce that trust. Every time that you act in alignment, you prove to your nervous system, hey, I've got us. And that changes your posture. It changes your tone. It changes the way that you show up in rooms. You stop performing and explaining or overqualifying your opinions, and you stop outsourcing your authority. And this is the part that people don't like to talk about. When you change like this, some people will leave you. Because if someone was benefiting from your people pleasing, if they were used to you bending, if your compliance made their life easier, your inner alignment will feel like resistance to them, and that can sting. But the people that do decide to stay with you, those are the ones that are aligned. Those are the ones who aren't there because you made yourself palatable to them. They're the ones that can tolerate your truth, and they don't need you to shrink yourself to feel comfortable. And this is the beginning of real belonging. So here's your toolbox practice for this week. I want you to sit with one question. If I wasn't afraid of someone leaving or disappointing someone or standing by myself alone, what would I already know is true? Not what would I do or what would I say, but what do I already know is true in my body? What is my intuition saying? And I want you to write it down. This is not so that you can second guess it or argue it or analyze it. It's just to notice, because your intuition is not trying to confuse you. It is trying to guide yourself back home to yourself, back to alignment, back to the version of you that doesn't need a panel of judges to live her life. Self-trust does not arrive in a big dramatic moment. It is built in all of these quiet acts of listening to yourself. And it's built every single time that you choose your truth over your fear of being misunderstood. This is a reminder that your intuition is not broken and it has not disappeared. It has been there the whole time. It's just been waiting for you to take it seriously. So next week, we're going to talk about what happens when you do start trusting yourself and why fear often shows up right before you're finally aligned. Until then, keep showing up, keep growing, and remember, you were never meant to dim your light. Thanks for tuning in and being here, for healing out loud, and for walking this path beside me. If this episode cracked something open or helped you remember a part of yourself, pass it on and share it with someone you love. For more support, free resources, or the next steps to your journey, head over to my website, myhealingisyourhealing.com. And if you loved today's conversation, subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your words help this space grow and help more women find their way home to themselves. If I was your muse today, then my healing is your healing. Until next time.